For those of you who own the W126 series, this is a video alert. I'm holding right here a windshield wiper arm assembly removed from a 1984 300 SD. And yes, it has failed. And I'm seeing this failure more often now as these cars get older and older. And I think from looking at this particular unit here and from the ones I've seen, generally the cause is due to lack of lubrication. Yes, that's right, you're hearing it again from me. Lack of lubrication is usually what causes these particular arm assemblies to fail. The motor drives this arm here through a lever action, and the shaft goes right up through the center of this aluminum housing, and when this shaft starts to bind due to lack of lubrication, it can overstress these plastic ball joints. And you can see right here that the ball socket joint that is attached to the motor itself has deteriorated, and this fell off. And of course the owner was driving down the road and all of a sudden the wiper stopped working. So the only way to prevent this type of failure is to periodically get into this assembly and lubricate it. Let me show you where it's located. It's not all that difficult to get to. The wiper arm drive mechanism is located right underneath this air intake screen. You can lubricate the shafts by removing the wiper arms and these rubber grommets. If you notice here, that exposes the shaft drives right here. I like to use automatic transmission fluid because you need a lubricant that will wick down that shaft and into the housing, so it can't be a grease. Well, automatic transmission fluid seems to work very well here, and it will hold. I would recommend you just soak this a couple times, let it sit and kind of suck down in there. Even start the wipers up and let them run a little bit, and then come back and add some more ATF. This should be done at least once a year, and maybe even every 6 months if you live in a really rainy climate. If you ignore this, these shafts can wear out, and they'll get sloppy, or they will start to bind, and you'll have problems with those arms popping off that I showed you earlier. So this is what you can do without having to remove the motor drive mechanism. If you want to inspect the motor drive mechanism, you're going to have to take the clips off this air intake vent. I've already done that. And then you can remove the cover like this, and this exposes the drive mechanism. And it's held in by a few bolts, and you can lift it out, get it on the bench, and then inspect it and lubricate that. I'll show you that more here in a second. If you're not familiar or not comfortable with removing this assembly, please refer to my instructions, which are available on my website. Before I talk more about lubrication, I should mention something about these little rubber grommets that you saw me remove earlier. This one is actually cracked, and when these crack or become brittle, they'll lose their seal, and it will allow more water, rainwater, to get down into that shaft area, and that is something you want to avoid. And these are the only things that are really protecting those shafts. So inspect these grommets underneath your wiper arms, and if they're old or cracked, I would highly recommend that you replace these two as a preventative measure. Now I'm going to go back to this older failed wiper drive assembly that I removed from that 84 300 SD and talk a little bit more about this. There are 3 ball socket joints on this. There are 3 joints that are just pins with rubber seals. There's not much you can do about those pins to seal them. One thing, anytime you get around rubber or plastic, you do not, and I'm going to repeat, you do not want to use any type of petroleum-based lubricant. Any type of petroleum-based lubricant will attack the rubber and will age and possibly crack the plastic. This is where you want to use synthetic grease. Synthetic grease has 2 advantages. Number 1, it holds up very well to water exposure. If there's water getting on this mechanism through the air vent, synthetic grease is what you want to stay on these joints. The other thing is synthetic grease will not attack plastic and rubber over time. So what I like to do is come in here with a little synthetic grease and peel back these, they're almost like tie rod rubber boots. And if you can peel them back a little bit and get down in here and get the synthetic grease into these boots and then close it back up, that's going to really extend the life of these ball socket joints. I'm going to show you this one here up close, and this one is nearing failure, and you'll be able to see why. Yes, it's because of lack of lubrication. Here's a ball socket that is very badly worn. Look at the slop in that. If you remove your wiper drive mechanism and you see any of the joints with this much slop, you're going to have to replace the unit. But look why. I'm going to roll this over and I'm going to peel back this rubber boot. Look at that. It just came out. I didn't even... So that would have failed very shortly. But if you look closely here, look at the rust in there. You can see that due to lack of lubrication, with moisture getting into this ball, it rusted up this ball, and of course that's what eventually wore through this piece of plastic and caused the ball to pop right out. Now, if you find this is the problem with your wiper drive assembly, you cannot buy individual parts, so I would recommend you try to find a good used replacement. You'll have to replace the whole assembly when you find these type of problems. There's another reason that you would want to remove this wiper drive mechanism completely from the car, because you can only, if it's in the car, you can only lubricate the wiper arm drive shaft from the top. And if you look here, look at the length of that. That shaft is going down through an aluminum housing. It's a stainless steel shaft. And the only way to really lubricate it is to soak it from both ends with ATF. And it may mean letting it sit for a while. You can see I'm going to soak this up and then turn it upside down. And I will work the mechanism back and forth. Already it's starting to loosen up. This was the one that had worn out the ball joint due to lack of lubrication. So getting it out of the car, inspecting these ball sockets and the mechanism for slop, as well as being able to lubricate both ends of the wiper arm shaft, those are critical to longevity of this mechanism right here. Now, we do offer new rubber grommet seals on our website, as well as a complete lubrication kit, which will have these special syringes that I use along with the synthetic grease that you'll need to lubricate this. So in closing, I'm going to warn you, if you don't take care of this, you will have a problem if you have a 126 sedan or a 126 SEC coupe.